In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at my new and improved draft ahead of Game Week 1. We're also going to run through all the key data you need to make the best decisions at the start of this FPL season. Now, before we dive into today's video, I just want to say a massive thank you to you guys for helping the channel hit 6,000 subscribers before the start of the season. Massive shout out to you guys. Like I said, really appreciate it. Now we are on that road to 7,500 subscribers, which is just unbelievable considering where we were this time last year. Let's start off first taking a look at some fixtures. Obviously, if you've watched any of my videos so far this season, you know I've obviously been starting every draft video kind of covering the fixtures because it's an important part of the game. I always think, you know, target the fixtures. That's where a lot of players are going to pick up good points. It's also where projected models as well also expect players to pick up good points. So it's always good to know at the start of the season which teams you should be looking to target and also which wildcard strategies you potentially might be on. So let's start off first with the fixtures that you want to potentially be looking to target. Arsenal have got some decent home fixtures in there. The Wolves, the Brighton, the Leicester, the Southampton in game weeks 1, 3, 6 and 7. Interestingly, I don't think Tottenham away is the worst fixture in the world. I think it's the Villa and City fixtures away that are probably going to cause a little bit more problems for Arsenal over the opening period. So maybe a little bit of consideration. Maybe, you know, the Reds aren't potentially Reds, especially that Tottenham one. I think that's more a grey. I could definitely see some goals happening in that game with the way that they like to expansively play football as well. So I don't think that's the worst fixture in the world. Villa, they've got some amazing fixtures, as you can see on screen in there. Newly promoted Leicester in match day 3 and newly promoted Ipswich in match day 6. The kind of standouts for them, to be honest. Chelsea as well after match day 1. Despite them not having a great pre-season, the fixtures are definitely there for the opening few weeks. The likes of Nkunku, Palmer, there's a reason they're very popular picks as well. Crystal Palace, some decent ones in there. Match day 3 and match day 2, probably the standouts for them with both home fixtures against West Ham and Leicester City. Fulham, again, this is a really good run. You know, New Boy, Emile Smith-Rowe, Muniz, Robinson, Castagna, all great picks from their side as well. Liverpool, probably the best fixture run over the opening 5 to 6 game weeks, you'd have to say. Newly promoted Ipswich in match day 1 as well represents a great captaincy option with Mohamed Salah. Cities as well, they've obviously got newly promoted Ipswich in match day 2. Some other good, decent greens in there. Newcastle as well have got a great set. Forest, a good set minus Liverpool in match day 4 as well. Spurs is opening 2 are pretty decent as well. So there's the teams that I would potentially be looking at. In terms of wildcarding, obviously some people will be setting up for that if you're kind of one of those managers that likes to prepare. I have a rough idea of when I want to wildcard. I think I'm currently looking around match day 8. That feels around the right time for me, but you never know with the game. You never know what could happen. There could be a new batch of emerging players that just all of a sudden crop up onto the scene and we all want them. But realistically, we're probably looking around match day 6 as a potential. So obviously, if you're kind of looking at that point, you're probably going to not potentially load up on as many Arsenal assets. And then match day 8, like I said, is also really decent with some pretty good fixture swings, especially for the likes of Everton. City as well, a great fixture swing for them. Liverpool start to cool a little bit as well in that period. So that's potentially another time to look at wildcarding. And then match day 12, obviously the fixtures aren't on there, but if you want to go and do your own research away, that is also another pretty good week. So just kind of outlining some potential wildcard strategies because it is an important part of the game and something you might need to think about when you are planning out your team, especially maybe if you're going to go for that early aggressive kind of stance. Hope to try and do as well as possible. Early wildcard as well to keep up with everybody else. It is a strategy. It is what people are going for. So I just thought I'd outline it in today's video. Right, let's move on to clean sheet data. Obviously, this is coming from 11ify. Link to their amazing work in the description if you want to go and check them out. Interestingly, Arsenal top 4 clean sheets over the opening 6 game weeks. It is those home fixtures that are definitely dragging up this statistic. They were the best defense last season for clean sheets, and I think again they're probably going to be right up there, especially if they're going to be challenging for that title. It seems like Arteta had the defensive setup completely nailed, so it would not surprise me to see them right up there for clean sheets. City in second as well, no real surprise there. Liverpool in third. I think all of those teams with some pretty decent opening home fixtures as well. There's no real surprises there. It's then when we move on to this kind of next section of kind of teams to potentially be looking to target. Everton, the likes of Mikolenko and Pickford in a lot of people's drafts, they're pretty decent. Konza I've seen in quite a few as well. Villa obviously being up there. Anderson and Henderson as well. Great options from Aston Villa. Crystal Palace, really decent shout as well. You've got Brighton as well with Barco kind of emerging as a 4 million talent. Lewis Dunk at 4.5. Fulham, like I alluded to, with their great fixtures as well, some pretty decent options. And with Forest having a great opening three, I think the likes of Willy Bolly and Aina are definitely going to be entering people's frames of mind. Down the bottom, some teams you'll probably be wanting to maybe look to attack or just avoid in general when picking up players. I think the 4 million ones is fine because realistically you're not going to be playing those. But the likes of Manchester United and Spurs, not too highly rated on the old clean sheet front as well. So maybe if you're looking at some of their cheaper assets, the likes of Martinez or maybe Van der Veen, it might be worth waiting till the fixtures do turn and the projected data is a little bit better for clean sheet odds. Right, let's move on to our final section before we dive into my updated draft for game week 1. Obviously, I've kind of been talking about this a lot in recent videos. If you watched my last draft video, I was talking about going without Erling Haaland. I didn't have him in that one. I might not have him in this one. We're going to obviously have to wait and see on that one. A little bit of teasing for you guys there. But I wanted to talk about kind of the projected points model and realistically where you're going to be captaining over the opening 5 game weeks, because that is the big deciding factor. And I think that is what makes Erling Haaland definitely worth the 15 million. It's his captaincy potential. And over those opening 5 game weeks, especially if you're on a match day 6 wildcard, there are probably 2 game weeks we'd have to say he's probably the clear favourite. Maybe the West Ham one as well is a pretty decent shout, but Cole Palmer and Salah definitely run him close for money as well. And Saka having a home fixture against Brighton, if they don't start the season well, could be a decent shout. And Ollie Watkins against the newly promoted Leicester as well. So there's other options in match day 3. So for me, Haaland only represents a decent captaincy option for 2 out of the opening 5 game weeks. This is why I suggested pivoting away, obviously utilising his money elsewhere and going for a Salah draft. I always think you've got to have one of Salah or Haaland. Those 2 realistically are probably the best captaincy options over the opening 5 game weeks for me, in my opinion. So what I'm going to suggest to you guys is to have at least one of these guys in your team. Obviously, I will be bringing out a updated draft with both of these guys in as well. So, if you want to check that out, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you will be notified when that video goes out. But I think it's interesting that he's actually predicted less points over the opening 5 than Mohamed Salah. And if you start to kind of add up everybody else's points over that period as well, the likes of Isak, Saka, Son, Palmer, these other players that you can then go and get into your team if you do drop Erling Haaland, I think you start to get a little bit of a recipe for success. Now, obviously, the big point and the big fear factor is going to be that game week 2 game against Ipswich, and that's where a lot of people are going to be put off. But I think, if you look at it from a more holistic standpoint and look at it over a kind of a 5 game week projection, I think the likes of everybody else could actually beat Erling Haaland, or maybe super close in terms of the aggregate points scored. Obviously, it is that matchday 2 game that people are going to be fearing, but I think sometimes you have to take individual game weeks out of fantasy and look at it from a bigger standpoint. Now, I know a lot of people are obviously obsessed with chasing green arrows and achieving certain rank points at different parts of the season. It's always great to get off to a great start. I 100% agree with that. But I think sometimes it's better to look at the season from kind of, different standpoints. Maybe, the opening couple game weeks don't go well and Haaland smashes it. But over the long course, maybe, Salah starts to pick up some points. Son, the likes of Saka as well, start to kick into gear a little bit towards those kind of match day 3, match day 4, match day 5, and then by match day 5 you're pretty much level with everybody that had Erling Haaland, or maybe potentially even better, because there's not too much to split them in terms of points scored across the entire season. But let me know what you think about this one down in the comment section. Are you Haaland in, or are you Haaland out? And moving on to my new and improved draft, we're going to start off with our goalkeepers first. Let's dive straight into it. We're going to go for Dean Henderson, and we are going to go for Bentley. It looks like Dean Henderson is going to be confirmed the #1 goalkeeper for Crystal Palace. It looks like from David Ornstein that Sam Johnson is going to be joining Southampton. So with that in mind, I think that makes Henderson a very easy pick at 4.5 million. Palace last season were the 5th best defence for XG conceded. So I think that's a great little pickup for me, to be honest. I will go and get Matthews as the 4 million goalkeeper within this side as well, if obviously that move does come off. 3.5. If it doesn't, I think Bentley's a pretty decent shout as well at 4 million. Played a few minutes last season, picked up 18 points for Wolves when Jose Sarr magically kept picking up injuries towards the back end of the season and did put in quite a few clangers. So if that does happen again, we potentially could see Bentley getting a few minutes, potentially if we do need him. But realistically, most of the 4 million goalkeepers are not going to be playing at the start of this season. Maybe throughout the year we might get one, but for now, very, very little to go off. Let's start off first with Pedro Porro. Last season, 3 goals, 8 assists for him. The opening 2 fixtures for Suez are pretty decent. Then it's obviously Newcastle and Arsenal. Not the greatest, but I've got to kind of plan with that one. I want to wait and see what Matteson looks like over the opening 2. Really, really good for attacking data in terms of Champions League last year, and pretty decent for Dortmund as well, and very, very good for Burnley back 2 seasons ago in the Championship. So the plan is to go for Pedro Porro over the opening 2. We might realistically just hold him for both of those more difficult fixtures anyway because of his attacking potential. He had the most shots among defenders last year, so even still could be a great pickup. And then after that, it does also continue to pick up as well. And I do fancy Spurs do quite well at the start of this season, so he's in there. Very, very good for attacking data, and I think he could be a little bit of a cheat code over the opening 2 weeks. Moving on to our next defender, it is going to be Gvardiol. 6 attacking returns for him last season, 9 clean sheets as well to go with that. The City fixtures, I think even the Chelsea ones they very easily could go and get a clean sheet. They were second for XG conceded last year as well. He was playing as a left winger at times, which was absolutely ridiculous, and has seen pretty good minutes as well over pre-season. It gives us a nice way into historically one of the best defences in the league for XG conceded, clean sheets, and goals conceded since Pep Guardiola joined. So for me, that's a big tick, and I think it's absolutely shocking that this guy's only 32.8% owned. I think that ownership after a couple good weeks is going to be close to 50. So I would recommend getting him in now, getting the full kind of Gvardiol package while it's still available, while he's still going to be decent for EO as well. So that's my advice on that one. And then finally finishing up, it is going to be William Saliba. As we saw with the 11ified data, they are predicted to do the best 4 clean sheets over the opening 6 game weeks. And I've kind of taken that on board. I was a little bit stubborn at first, but I've been looking at more and more projections around clean sheet data, and obviously using Fantasy Football Hub's predicted points model as well. If you want to go and get your team rated for free by AI, use the link in the description as well. And also, they are offering a 7-day free trial. And if you use the link, it helps me out as well. So it's a little bit of a win-win for both. But yeah, William Saliba. I'm warm into that Arsenal defence a little bit more as well. I'm not a big fan of spending the money on Raya. I know some people are, but for me, I think what Saliba allows me to do is have a little bit of flexibility around other premium defenders if I want to hop off or Arsenal don't look as good or anything like that, or there's any rotation. Raya, I'm kind of stuck, and it's either going to be a case of 6 or 2 points realistically is his limit. Whereas you feel like with Saliba, Gabriel, other potential kind of defenders that could emerge onto the scene, there's a lot more wiggle room for extra additional points that they could pick up, and I think that could be, you know, worth that extra 0.5 million in my opinion. That's the way I'm seeing it at the moment. Let me know if you disagree, but you know, really, really good clean sheets from last year. 18 clean sheets for Arsenal. Again, I think they'll do stupendously well again for clean sheets this year, especially if they're going to be towards the top end of the table. Moving on to our 2 bench defenders, it is going to be Barco, obviously a popular pick within the FPL community, seen decent minutes over the course of pre-season. It looks like Estupiñán is going to miss the start of the season as well, so he will be the starting left back. There's some okayish fixtures in there as well, more towards, you know, match day, I think it's match day 4 and 5 onwards, so he still might not be playing at that point. But if we can get a, you know, attacking fullback and a pretty decent attacking side for 4 million, makes a little bit of sense to me, to be honest. And then the other one is going to be another 4 million playing defender. It is going to be Wout Fass. This is my only concern. I am a little bit and ahhing, as you can see. I think maybe we could drop one of the midfielders down to, you know, a 6.5, and that potentially could open the door to bring in a 4.5. And if I was going to do that, it would be Kwanzaa from Liverpool. Some pretty good predicted points and seen great minutes over pre-season, starting over Konate. So if you are looking for a 4 million defender with great opening fixtures, he could be a really, really decent shout. Liverpool, as well as we saw, really, really good projected data as well for clean sheets. Right, let's move on into the midfield. Let's start off with Eze, the Fantasy Football Hub predicted points. Absolutely loves him, and I think it's for very good reason. He is the main man for Nottingham Forest, Crystal Palace now. 11 goals, 5 assists for him last year. Pretty decent, to be honest. I think now as well with penalties to that list, I think it makes him, you know, a talisman for that Crystal Palace side, who under Glasner at the end of the season were cooking, really. So, you know, it's a big case of if Mateta's back as well for that opening game. I think if he is, I think that makes him an even stronger option, in my opinion. But a really, really decent pickup is Eze as well. Moving on to our next midfielder, it is going to be Son. 17 goals and 10 assists last season. Pretty decent. Over 200 points scored. Like I spoke about, the fixtures as well are pretty tasty as well. And I even think the difficult fixtures, the Newcastle and the Arsenal games, not really that big of a deal for him. Obviously, he picked up a brace last season against Arsenal as well, and I think he's one of those players that could be a great option. Obviously, they are looking to buy a striker, and I think what Son might potentially become is a placeholder for the opening 2 game weeks, and then give me a way to even go get Cole Palmer if, you know, he's looking good and Chelsea are obviously ticking and cooking, or go and get myself a Phil Foden and a KDB to take advantage of City's decent fixtures as well over that period. So Son at the moment feels a little bit more like a placeholder, but very easily could be coming out of this side for Dominic Solanke if he moves. He's obviously a player that I'm very, very happy towards. I think he's a great player to have on penalties, pretty much a 90-minute man at Bournemouth, and I think he'll only continue to improve if he does manage to move to Tottenham Hotspur. Right, let's move on to Bukayo Saka. Obviously for him last year, really, really good. The projected points as well are obviously, you know, they're going quite well for him in his favour as well. The betting odds pretty decent. And at the moment, we're trying to get into Saka with only 25.6% owned. Maybe, you know, this is a little bit of a, I'd say maybe like a premium differential, because usually most of the time the big boys are never going to be this low owned, and he's at 25.6%. I think that Wolves home game could be a great way to start the season if he managed to pick up a couple of attacking returns as well. Came off the bench in their last pre-season game as well, so that's very encouraging to see as well from an FPL standpoint. It means obviously Arteta is going to trust him, and I imagine he'll see decent minutes over the opening couple game weeks as well. The Villa away fixture I think could be difficult. Obviously Villa did the double over Arsenal last campaign, and I could see something very, very similar happening again. But what I like about Saka is if obviously Brighton don't look too hot in match day 3, decent fixture there. The Spurs game he did exceptionally well, and then obviously the game week 5 game is tricky. It is tricky, but the projected points model still absolutely loving him, and again it gets us another penalty taker into our side. Moving on to our next midfielder, it is going to be Mohamed Salah. 18 goals, 12 assists, 211 points, one of his lowest points totals over the past couple seasons, but still managing to breach that 200 mark as well. Been absolutely on fire in pre-season. I think represents a great captaincy option over the opening 5 game weeks. A player who's historically scored quite well, and I think at times last season as well did manage to score quite well as well. So I'm a big fan of Mohamed Salah. And then finally finishing up, it is going to be Anthony Gordon, the second highest scoring player at home. He's got a home fixture in game week 1. The Newcastle fixtures, as we alluded to, pretty decent as well. 11 goals, 16 assists for him as well. So for me, feels like a great little pickup. No problems with that one. Right, let's move on into our front line. We're going to start off with Chris Wood. Obviously, if you've kind of been watching any of the channel, you know I'm very, very hot on Chris Wood right now. 14 goals, 1 assist. Obviously, a 1 year's back, but they're just playing a pre-season friendly now as I'm filming this. Very close to the start of the season, and Chris Wood is actually starting in the lineup, and I do think he'll start over the opening 3. Maybe as a 1, starts to get himself back to fitness, and obviously like had some mental health issues as well. Starts to get his head back into the game. He maybe could be back amongst the kind of contention, but at that point I think we'll have a little bit more data on the likes of Muniz. Obviously, you know, there's other forward options emerging as well at that 5.5 million price point. Maybe if Armstrong's looking pretty decent, we could potentially go for him as well. So there's a lot to potentially consider here with Chris Wood, but over the opening 3 I think it gives us a pretty decent player who could be a great differential. Again, the Fantasy Football Hub predicted points model, absolutely loving Chris Wood over the opening 5 game weeks. Next up is going to be Alexander Isak. 0.83 goals per 90 for him last season, 21 goals as well, and I could very easily see him smashing another 20 in this campaign. Some great fixtures for Newcastle, and for me, one of the dark horses to get Champions League football and even potentially put up a mount towards that title charge as well. So I'm a big fan of Alexander Isak, and again, could be a nice differential captain if you're not going for Haaland or Salah in match day 1 as well. And then the final forward, finishing up today's video, it is going to be Jebson. I might be like, who the hell is this guy? Where's he come from? He has just signed for Bournemouth, and I think this one only becomes an option if Solanke leaves the club. They might go and sign a replacement, but for starting 4.5 million, we could have it in Jebsen. Obviously, they've got Unal, but he's obviously going to miss the start of the season with a foot operation. So it would be Jebsen, and probably Semenyo will probably head kind of back up front for them as well. That would be their kind of maybe two strikers that they've got at the club at the moment. Maybe Kluivert moves over, but other than that, I think Jebsen at 4.5 could be a decent shout. Obviously, we've got Stewart as well, but I think with the more and more additions Southampton start to make, and, you know, Ben Brighton Diaz starting to cook in pre-season as well, I think those options are looking a little bit frail in my opinion. Let me know what you think of my new and improved draft down in the comment section below. And if you've got any questions about your team as well, get them in there. And like I said, if you want your team rated by AI, use the link in my description. But thank you very much for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in game week 1.